So let's go. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for attending to the fourth day of our TIEMS annual conference, virtual conference, of course. And before giving the floor to the chairman, Mr. Sandro Bologna, I want to apologize in the name of the organization because our keynote, our daily keynote, Mr. Professor Moreno is not able to give his talk, probably due to illness. So sorry for that, but I give immediately the floor to the chairman of the morning, Sandro Bologna.
Yeah, thank you, Jean-Paul. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to session 7, Smart Resilient Cities. I have to announce that unfortunately the keynote speaker will not be with us, and so we have plenty of time for the presentations and discussion. I will start the session with my view of smart city, and then I will leave the floor to the first speaker. Okay. Jean-Paul, can you close the screen? Yeah, thank you. So the session is devoted to the topic of smart city resilience and what is a smart cities. Well, nobody knows at the moment. Everybody has a different definition of a smart city or smart community. Maybe is better than a smart city. And technology providers are trying to convince us that the solution is in the display of a lot of technology. That is not true. At least in my view, that is not true. The smart city has to consider the citizen in the middle, and the technology has to be at the service of the citizen to make the life of a citizen much easier and comfortable, not the vice versa. So that is a generic picture about different components of a smart city. You know, there is a theory at the moment that is called the system of systems, modeling the system of systems. And a smart city is a very good system of systems. And modeling a smart city is a very complicated issue with a lot of dependencies among the different systems composing the smart cities. And don't try to solve the problem of a smart city with a simple solution and just with the technology displaying in, a lot of technology. It doesn't work. You need engineers that are expert in different fields. For example, energy field, because the concept of a smart energy is a basic, very basic concept in the smart city. And you know, how to save energy, how to distribute energy, how to produce energy. These are different aspects in a smart city. And at least in Italy, but I suppose also in the rest of the world, a lot of public buildings are using a lot of energy, and there is no energy saving procedures or policy used. Then logistic is also a very important aspect in the smart city. And the logistic is changing in this, well, in this last years, but above all, as a consequence of the pandemic COVID-19 that is all over the world. I was really surprised when I read that in these last 10 months, Amazon has made a new contract for about 500,000 people, 500,000 people, new people working on logistics. And are we sure that we are following the concept of a sustainable logistic? I don't know, we should think about. Another very important aspect is of mobility. A smart city, of course, needs mobility engineering, studying a possible solution, and technology may help to mobility, but not solve everything. For example, in countries like Italy, but also France, and maybe Germany, where we have a lot of old cities with a very small number of citizens. The problem of mobility cannot be solved only with the technology. Some has to be a new design. And also healthcare. Healthcare was, no, there is a lot of attention at the moment to the problem of healthcare, how to improve the healthcare system and to deal with all the new patients we have at the moment. So this is my view of a smart city. I could go on with other skills that are necessary for running a smart city. So please, what I want to say is that I'm against or I'm not in favor of trying to solve the problem of a smart city just displaying technology. And there are also additional problems. The technology provider are telling us that by displaying technology, you can solve the problem of safety. But when you display this new IT technology, a new problem is coming out, is the problem of cybersecurity. So you have to balance safety with the cybersecurity. And last but not least is the problem of ethics. Now everybody is pushing the use of artificial intelligence in the smart city. Well, we should consider also the problem of ethics. You know, artificial intelligence may help, but please take care about how to use artificial intelligence. And we should see artificial intelligence together with this ethics problem, this mass surveillance. There is a lot of discussion in my country about mass surveillance. Are we ready to accept mass surveillance or not? That is also a very important topic for smart city. And now I have done my introduction, and I am ready to leave the floor to our first speaker. Our first speaker is Brian Olesuk. Brian is an experienced professional in multiple phases in emergency management, business continuity, incident management, training, and facility management. He is working in the South Australian, well, he is in Australian country. Brian, the floor is to you.
Thank you. I'll just get my screen up. Right, thank you very much, and look, welcome everybody. Good morning over there, and good evening over here. It's just after 7:30 at night. My brief talk is basically something that goes in my background, as in with emergency management and business continuity. When I first started this many years ago, I was getting very confused with the emergency management and the business continuity side, because I've started to see a lot of crossover between the two. So as you go on, hopefully you might see where the title Terrible Twins comes in. Anyway, look, the aim really is not to really resolve an issue, but challenge a current perspective and how professionals we can move forward in its field and terminology, because terminology throughout the world is quite different. And that's, I once again realised when I was doing this, because in Australia, we use what we call a comprehensive approach to emergency management, which has 4 factors. Other countries use 5, and that's fine, because it meets the needs for that incident. So anyway, have you have questions through there if you wish, or at the end maybe actually better, but we'll go from there. Okay, so let's start off with crisis management and incident management. Now, there are other terms that people use for this, but basically, when a business disruptive event occurs, I hear crisis management. But having had experience myself in emergency response, and that's as a first responder, and then later in emergency management, which is over above response managing, I'm used to the terminology incident management team. It really doesn't matter. I've always seen a crisis management team as the same as incident management, essentially do the same function. I've also heard somebody say, but Brian, the word crisis conjures up more emotion, etc. And I've thought about that quite a lot. So basically, are we managing a crisis, or is the event the crisis, and the incident or event management is the process that we're actually managing? So we manage it calmly because we're managing a crisis. In other words, we're madly doing things in crisis mode, or are we being calm, collected in a set way, dealing with an incident for the crisis? So in certain ways, I look at it as incident management can deal with a crisis using the principles of incident management. So with that, also with business continuity, they also referred to crisis management many years ago, but now in their latest good practice guide, they actually started talking about incident management. Another catalyst for me thinking about why are the two, and actually not actually why, are there actually two disciplines merging? Hence, my next slide. Are they the two terrible twins? Okay, so many years ago when I first started this, I actually saw them as potentially cousins. Yeah, they're sort of the same business, but as time went on, I started looking at how things actually went, and there was lots of similarities, different terminologies, but as I just mentioned before, in the latest good practice guide out of BCI UK 2013, they're using more incident management terminology. Now, as I mentioned before, Australia uses a comprehensive approach to emergency management, which is the prevention, preparation, response, and recovery. Mitigation is also used in place of prevention in Australia and in other countries, and also prevention and mitigation is also the fifth one that some countries actually use. Not really fussed about that, because it's all about meeting the needs of whatever incident you're using or process that your country or state uses, depending where you are. But business continuity uses implementation, validation, analysis, and embedding business continuity with policy and program management. So in Australia, we actually have a system that we use mainly in the fire services in South Australia. It's going through all state governments in South Australia, but also in other states. It's called the Australian Incident Management System. It's based on TIEMS, which is the one based in America. But there's 5 key things. It's about flexibility, management by questions, management, unity command, and span control. So with that, when I started moving on and started thinking about this more, I suddenly realised that maybe, are they actually twins? Like Siamese twins. Because basically, the more I go into it, the more, when you look at the core functions, the core principles that we're actually using, forget the words we use, because a lot of it's the principles of the words we use. A lot of the principles are actually the same. So then I started questioning, really, is it conjoined twins? So here I want to introduce EM and BC management. This is when I started thinking about 2 years ago. Is the discipline an actual fact like conjoined twins? Same DNA. It's virtual right through the whole thing, but two slight thought processes. They are individuals in their own right, but it's the same DNA. So it really doesn't matter how we actually deal with things. It's still part of it. So hence that's why I thought the terrible twins from there. So I'll go into this part here. So where I'm going in the future, on the left-hand side, I'm there with prevention, mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. We also have sliding around there. And the reason this is all going around, because this is all intermingled, this is representation of how all the systems seem to intermingle all the time, but they still are standalone processes in their own right to achieve a particular outcome. So with the good practice guide there, one slide right there, which is on the bottom side there, which is analysis, design, implementation, and validation and embedding. You've also got the community principles going around as well. So really, it doesn't matter whether in emergency management, in my view, business continuity, crisis management, or resilient community or resilient cities, we are using the same principles, etc. So from there. So then I started thinking, okay, so I've actually started talking about conjoined twins. So we're actually saying we've got the same DNA, just slightly different thought processes. So these are all the principles that we work under, okay, being the DNA. And then I started thinking a bit further about this. There's something that underpins everything we do, whether it's emergency management, emergency response, business continuity management, business continuity plans. There's one thing that underpins everything that we do. We go through this. So I'm going, well, hang on. How does this all fit in? Are we the same, really the same business? Because depending where you are, I mean, in Australia, we focus very heavily on risk management processes, even though we have emergency management principles. A lot of the private businesses tend to deal with more risk management. It's larger than emergency management in Australia. And in other countries, it's actually different. So I'm now wondering whether the risk management process actually adds another complexity to it as well. So this is where I wonder whether, in actual fact, this title that I've used, the terrible twins, is actually incorrect. Is it terrible triplets? Because basically, everything we do, all the principles that we apply to achieve our outcome needs to have risk management process. We need, and the process and a lot of the terms that we actually use are very similar. So I often wonder about that. Parting thought. As Darwin states, it's not the strongest or the most intelligent that will survive, it's rather the ones that are most adaptive. Which also brings the question about with the process between emergency management, business continuity, and risk management, also bringing the adaptive leadership or adaptive management process nowadays, how that affects there. And these are all questions. I have no solutions to this. It's more of a thought-provoking, sharing my thoughts. So basically, you continue here. Nature has been running resilience for thousands of years. Nature does it fairly well. It's a way of thinking and operating in tune with your environment successfully. Is it a time for strategic change in how we manage and lead our businesses? Is it time for building resilience through leadership? I got from organisational resilience. And I did this in 2016 because I presented this previously. This is a slight down version of what I actually did in 2016. But really, where I'm coming from here is that we shouldn't need to manage it. We need to be adaptive, meet the needs of whatever we're facing. And we're talking about resilient cities, etc., and other areas. And as Sandra pointed out before, the citizen is the core. And that's actually so daily. So we've got to make sure that we adapt and we meet the needs of the people, the citizens, to make sure that whatever we do, we make them resilient through technology or through AI or whatever we do. We're still applying the same principles. So really just to sum up, what I'm really saying is emergency management, business continuity, risk management, really to me, I'm beginning to think is become one, and it could be called organisational resilience. It could be resilience officer, which is I've seen in some areas starting to come in Australia as well, a little bit overseas, because the more terms are becoming interchangeable. And once again, it's meeting the needs of what you're dealing with, whether it's an incident or whether it's a risk that you're facing. You're still going to meet the needs using the principles to meet the needs of what you're facing. So when I do training for incident management, as I say, you've got to use the principles, the functions to meet the needs of the incident, because what you felt yesterday might not work today because there's something totally different. Based on that, there's my contact details. If you have any questions, I'm open to questions. Okay. So yeah, I'll see what I can do there. So I'm happy to answer any questions through there. I'll stop sharing my screen.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you. I will start with a question, but
Yeah, sure.
I'm not sure that you want to answer to the question. Do you have an idea about business continuity versus resilience? Because
I do.
I'm participating to different conferences, and there is a lot of discussion around these two concepts. There are people saying that the business continuity, what is your point of view, if you have one?
My view is it's the application of emergency management or business continuity principles that give you resilience. So it's dealing with it. I actually see, and I know some people disagree with me with this. I actually think resilience is the outcome, because you become resilient. So by using a lot of the principles you use, it will then give you become more resilient, or your company becomes more resilient because you've applied business continuity plans, you've used your business continuity management processes, and because of that, you become a resilient organisation. So I see resilience as an outcome, not as a process. We're using the processes, in my view, are either business continuity management, emergency management principles, risk management processes. They are the processes, to me, that give you resilience. So it makes you resilient. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Shall we say that the business continuity is a subset of resilience, or is it wrong?
I wouldn't say a subset, personally. I actually think it's, I think business continuity is one of the processes to use to give you resilience. I suppose it is a subset in that way, I suppose, yeah, when I really think about it, a subset, because a subset is part of it. I'm just thinking about the terminology used, but it is definitely part of it. So I suppose in one way it would get subset. But as I said, I think resilience is the outcome process, not the actual, sorry, the outcome, not the process.
Yeah.
I would have a question to Brian. The link between incident management and crisis management is, for me, very interesting, because it deals with strategical decision.
Yep.
So I would have probably some contact with you if you could give your opinion on the link between the two things, the two things, or not.
Yep. Well, actually, that's a good question, because, see, I actually think they're the same. To me, they're only a word. As I said during the presentation, crisis is a very emotive word. It brings up a lot of emotion. We are in crisis. So if we are in crisis, still an incident, because something has occurred. So an incident has occurred that's now a crisis. So you still need to use the process of incident management. And to me, I've thought about this, and this is a personal opinion. I would prefer, my personal thing would be used, I'm managing this through management process. I'm managing this crisis. I'm not crisis management. I'm managing the crisis that way rather than, well, we use the word crisis management. It's more of a calmer process of dealing. It's a bit of a, how can I put it? It may not be clear, but I think there is a difference. But when it comes down to the impact of it, or the basic parts, it really doesn't matter, because crisis management and incident management principles really should be the same. Flexibility, functional management, management by objectives, span of control. As long as it has that, I suppose in certain ways it's a play on words, but with my idea with play on words, I prefer incident purely because crisis is a very emotive word and it keeps people calm when you're dealing with the crisis, in my view. But I mean, that's a personal opinion.
Any other question to Brian? Meanwhile,
Sandro, if I
Roman,
can just...
Roman, you are welcome.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Brian. That was very insightful. And I have to say that this is not the first time that I'm hearing that everything kind of colludes between business continuity, emergency management. I would argue, based on what we've heard and also based on other stuff that I have witnessed, that resilience and emergency management and business continuity ultimately fall under disaster management. And they are or not disaster management per se, but disaster risk management. And the reason for that is not just the recent COVID pandemic, but it also the fact that if you look at the most overarching frameworks like Sendai and others, they do in one way or another talk to the points that you have raised. And it goes back to a presentation that I've heard Alex from Canada give 2 years ago in Manila at our annual conference, and he dealt with the fact that ultimately the vocabulary we use in all those fields is different, but the principles, like you correctly pointed out, that we use are very similar. And I think that integration will probably have to take over as the overriding philosophy of disaster risk management and reduction going forward. Because ultimately you need to find a common denominator for all of these principles and vocabularies and all that. Yep. But very exciting to see the thoughts that you have presented. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, just to wrap up, you actually, Roman, you mentioned just maybe have a think. When one of the things that was really the catalyst with emergency management, we talk about response and recovery. One of the things I found a lot is that recovery and business continuity derived out of the DR, the disaster response DRICT world. Talk about we're recovering from disaster. Really, the recovery sector of an emergency management section really is your business continuity plans and how you're going to deal with it. So really, they are. That's why I'm saying that they're actually the same. I think this is where a lot of organisations, and I'm a member of BCI UK as well as TIEMS and IAM, I think this is where we're going to struggle, because there's going to be a bit of a turf war, really, because I really can see it's we're using the same principles. But I'll leave it there, because basically otherwise we start talking about the national level when it. But yeah, you're right. That's yeah, and I agree with you. So no, thanks for that. Thank you. Any other questions?
I don't see any other question. So let's move to the next speaker. Next speaker is Mrs. Yukako. Mrs. Yukako, yeah, you are here. Special appointed senior assistant professor, Department of International Epidemiology, Center for International Cooperation, Tokyo Medical University, Japan. Yukako, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for your kind introduction. My name is Yukako Komasa from Japan, and I apologize to you all that my 7-month-old baby is listening here because it's nighttime in Japan and he's a little bit sick from the end of October. So please forgive this situation. So I start. So my son was born in this April under the declaration of emergency by the Japanese government regarding coronavirus, and it was really in silence in the towns. But we have also experienced such a silence 10 years ago. So my presentation is about the disaster response works, especially the very local practice in Fukushima Prefecture after the nuclear power plant accident. So right after the accident, the situation was like this, and this is the exclusion zone. And after 3-4 years, the situation was like this. I work as a member of disaster response team to support one of the local government to respond to the health screenings and also health protection works with public health nurses. Right after the accident, this is from the data of National Institute for Environmental Studies, and this is how one of the radioactive nuclides, radioactive iodine, spread by the wind right after the accident. And the left side is air density, and the right side is soil surface density. So right after the accident, the wind comes from the south and from the north, and like that, the radioactive iodine spread. And we are supporting Nihonmatsu City, where is marked as like this. And this hidden area is exclusion zone. So the city is next to the exclusion zone, and the population was about 50,000. And it's within 37 to 60 kilometers from Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. Right after the accident, there are a lot of questions from the residents. For example, is it safe to continue to live here? Or can I drink water? Or is it possible to take care of children in this region? But we had no evidence since it was first time for us to experience such an accident. So we could only to investigate to find the evidence for next step. So we supported local government to investigate what is happening. As a first step, we started to examine the level of external radiation exposure. But at that time, the number of device was quite limited. So we set priority to the children. In this survey, a total of about 7,000 children participated in this study, almost all of the children. And this is the result. And so right after the accident in 2011, the mean or average level of external radiation exposure was like 1.5 millisievert. It's slight over the upper limit recommended by International Committee for Radiation Protection. It's almost 1.5 times higher than the upper limit recommended for general public. And the second year is almost the same. And the third year, the level was a bit lower than the 1 millisievert. And the fourth year, so on. And from this survey, we also found that the level of external radiation exposure was different by the building materials of children's houses. Because Nihonmatsu City is a bit local area of Japan, many of the children lived in wooden houses. And this is also, along with the survey one, we examined the level of internal radiation exposure, which means that the radiation exposure level of internal, so the radioactivity of human body, inside the human body. In this survey, over 10,000 residents participated in this study, and the period one, just early stage, and period two was a bit later stage. And this survey continues to now. And as of September 2020, over 30,000 residents participated. According to this study, we found that, sorry. Most of the participants had the under the I'm sorry for that. And most of the participants was had quite low level of internal or effective dose of radiation. And but when we see the data by the age, the higher the older person had the higher detection rate of radiation. This is because of the diet. Most of the sorry. Most of the elderly had the diet to eat the wild plants and also wild mushrooms. So we estimated that those elderly had the intake of those wild plants and wild mushrooms. And according with the more two surveys, we have also examined the level of radioactivity in foods for home consumption. And according to this survey, we also found that the wild mountain vegetables and also mushrooms had the higher level of radioactivity. So from this experience, we started to share the information right after the survey to the residents, so to make feedbacks to the residents. And we also started to work with the municipal education board and school teachers to prevent further to prevent further intake of radionuclides and also further exposure from the environment. So our team and also school teachers and local public health nurses try to make the textbook and also curriculums for local students to elementary schools and junior high schools. This is an example from the textbook. So we this is to the elementary school children, and this says, oh, what is radiation and what is external radiation exposure and what is internal radiation exposure, or this is why the radionuclides spread around Japan, and also how we measure the radiation. And this is how we do the decontamination works. And this is how we can prevent ourselves when another nuclear emergency happens. This is from our article, and we found that the level of the cautiousness toward the radiation can also affect on the level of the external radiation exposure. So we can say that if we have a consciousness, and it will affect on the attitude and preventive behavior towards radiation. So from our work, our 10 years work, we learned that to investigate and share information right after the investigation and share it with the residents, including children, and learn it together. And from this cycle, we can gain the resilience and also preparedness to the other emergency. And we can say that do not conclude so early and keep investigating, and it will contribute to make further resilience of that community. Thank you for listening. And I apologize for my baby crying. I'm sorry, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Yukiko. She will come back. Oh, yes. Yukako, what is the name of your child? The name of your child?
Momo-se. Momo-se.
It is difficult to me. Just, I try to formulate a question. The result of your investigation has had an impact on the city manager, in the meaning that city manager are learning from your investigation about how to design and how to implement cities in the future, because you have been mentioning that, for example, the use of different building materials have had an impact on the radiation release. Can you say something? Who is really using the result of your investigation?
Yes, because from our investigation, regarding the building materials, we can say that the school buildings are, most of the school are made of concrete, and so it will be a bit safer than their houses. So if something happens, the school is safe. So at 2 or 3 years after the accident, the local children or parents were having questions that whether the children can play outside or not, and the municipality government decided that the inside the school building is safe, so that they can play or they can play sports inside the school building. That was a very first step for children to how to say, to come back to the normal life.
Okay, thank you. Any other question to Yukako? No, I will do it. It is a curiosity. How is the health situation now in that area? The people has returned to live in all area around Fukushima nuclear power plant, or what? What is the health situation in that area now?
So, sorry. Yes, your question is recent situation of Fukushima.
Yeah.
Yes. In 2000, at this moment, we still have the exclusion zone, which in which people cannot live, but that kind of area is bit that kind of area is around almost 10 to 20 kilometers from the nuclear power plant, and in some municipalities around the nuclear power plant, people started to leave because the evacuation order was lifted. But the lifting of evacuation order is depends on the municipality. So so in some villages or some cities, people come back, but if the lifting of evacuation order was early, for example, 2 or 3 years after the accident, people decide to come back. But after 5 or 6 years, people, most of the evacuees started to live outside of that area and started to work or started to go to school in the area that they evacuated. So it's becoming more and more difficult to come back to that area, to the evacuation zones, because of their because of the how to say the matters of quite personal living conditions.
Thank you, Yukako. If there are no other questions, I would like to move to the next speaker. The next speaker is also a lady, Manomita Das. Okay, she is here. Manomita is a young professional working in the field of disaster studies for the past 5 years. She is currently associated with BITS Pilani, I don't know what it is, in India as a researcher. Manomita, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'll share my presentation first. Uh, Thank you so much, sir, for introducing me. And I am from Birla Institute of Technology and Sciences. So that is a university in India, and I'm a research scholar there. Today I will be presenting on the topic prospects and challenges of implementing early warning systems in urban areas of developing nations. So I will be providing a practitioner's perspective on this aspect, because I was myself working on the development of early warning system like 2 years back. So in my presentation, I will introduce the research problem that I tackled in my research or study. And then I will discuss the methodology that I adopted to conduct the study. And this will be followed by my findings and conclusions. So hazard warning systems have been recognized as effective tools to minimize the impact of disasters. They provide timely and relevant information and enable administrators to preemptively act before a hazard strikes. And in almost all smart cities, there have been this argument towards the development of early warning systems. The Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction also strongly emphasizes the need to develop and strengthen warning systems. I was associated with one such project, and my motivation to conduct this study came from my experience of working in that project. So while I was working in the project, I realized that we were doing the background study, the desk-based review, and we realized that there was ample documentation on why early warning systems are required, how to develop the ideal early warning system, the best practices, what happens after the development of an early warning systems in terms of how people respond and the effectiveness of the system. But very few papers or reports documented the barriers. Yes,
Manometa,
yes.
what are you looking on the screen? What are you saying? Because we see.
You are
Uh,
not seeing my. Oh, I'm sorry. I was referring to my write up. So maybe that is the. I'll just share the tab. Hold on a second. Is there any option for sharing tabs in this? Share screen.
You could
you should
try to
have the
see if it's a
full
speaker's
screen.
notes.
It's
If
what?
if, if you have it as speaker's notes in PowerPoint, you should be able to put them on the screen.
I do not have. So what I'll do then is I will let me see. Share. Uh,
That is fine. That is okay. Okay.
yeah.
Fine.
Is this visible now? Yeah. Okay, so I will go ahead. So what we tried to understand was what were the challenges faced during the development and implementation of an early warning system, how were the challenges overcome, and what were the concerns regarding the implemented early warning systems, or what concerns remain. So these were the research questions with which I started the research study. uh, so the methodology that I used for the purpose of the study was a qualitative approach. The sites for conducting the study was Calcutta and Mumbai within India. So you can see here, if this is India, so in the east, Calcutta lies in the eastern part of India, and these are a few photographs of urban flooding in India. And this is Mumbai, which is on the western part of India, and these are again a few pictures of flooding in Mumbai. So in the initial phase of the study, I conducted a desk-based review of existing documents and scholarly reports, as also newspaper articles and so on. And then I conducted 45 telephonic interviews utilizing a semi-structured questionnaire with practitioners, government officials, and other NGO and CBO functionaries and civilians who resided in that area, uh, to get answers to my question. It was a purposive sampling because my objective was to uh, target the few people who had actually worked on early warning systems or had experience of working with early warning systems. I the it the findings of the narrative is also developed utilizing my personal experience of living and working in both the cities, particularly my experience of working towards the development of an early warning system in Calcutta. So I used QDA Miner for the analysis of the study, and the different sections of the sentences or paragraphs were coded based on which themes were derived, and based on that the narrative is formed. So findings, uh, the the major part of the challenges can be categorized into three different themes. First is governance issues. So in I will have to refer to my notes because I have certain snippets of the comments that people mentioned. So I'll just refer to them. Yeah. So so the so it is well documented that in nations where developmental challenges coexist with disasters, the priority of disaster risk reduction is often lower, and as such the institutional support and encouragement to develop early warning systems is also less. So when we were talking with the different stakeholders, one administrator remarked that the idea of early warning system is nice, but it is a developed nation concept. We have more immediate needs. I require systems which address these needs before everything else. Even when consensus is there on the need of such systems, lack of enthusiasm is observed, and this attribution of low priority to early warning systems often creates unnecessary delay or hassles in the implementation. Secondly, there were issues of financial commitments and human resources. So early warning systems are often developed in situations where which are resource constrained with the urban local bodies. In these situations, often the uh, the officials who are responsible for managing the early warning system, or the nodal authority with which the researchers are liaising, they are stretched thin. They have multiple other responsibilities, and in such a situation, the adding on to their workload creates problems. So one of our respondents mentioned that we had only one meeting in a week with the nodal officer. Mostly he was on lunch break because of his tight schedule. This caused unnecessary delay in taking major decisions of the project, and it was frustrating. Similarly, another researcher mentioned that we were not provided office space by the urban local body as mentioned in our terms and conditions for the first 6 months. There was a lack of space for their own employees. Only after the first review meeting, things improved. So these challenges often increase the delay with which early warning systems are when early warning systems are implemented. Secondly, operational challenges. So these challenges refer to the kind of challenges which are faced while getting the system up and running. So the first thing is the technological gap or the digital divide. For example, in tech, the during a discussion with an official, the official mentioned that the early warning systems definitely sound promising, but we are pen and paper people. We have existing systems. We have been working this way for too many years, and suddenly changing everything is difficult. So we see that often people are, even if they are competent to run and maintain such a system, they are uncomfortable to adapt to such a system. There is also a lack of trust on technological systems. For example, one administrator mentions that it is better to not have not too much dependency on machines. If we start using them for everything, when machines fail, we would have stopped knowing how to operate without them. And there was also a sense of hostility and disbelief in certain cases that we observed. For example, one NGO official mentioned that when such technology based systems are deployed, there is often a fear that such systems might not be all that is said. For example, the system might only record humidity level in the area, but people may think that it is a CCTV camera installed to monitor them and break connection at the dead of the night. Even after doing sufficient community outreach, the factor of disbelief persists. So these were a few operational challenges which were not we did not consider while we started the operation of the system. And when I spoke with the, or when I documented the different participants in my study, they also mentioned these issues that they have faced when they were developing early warning systems. Another issue was with service delivery. So the people who function as first responders in these cities are often belong to are often informal labor or belong to the marginal socioeconomic groups. So they do not have access to smartphones or devices through which they can get the warning message and then start accordingly. They often have only one smartphone or application or a cell phone within their houses, which they leave at their houses when they come for work. So designing a warning system and budgeting accordingly, considering that the deployment the service delivery will be using smartphone or mobile or any internet based technology. So that creates a problem in these cases. And lastly, there are sustainability concerns. So even when the project is being implemented, the one RA in a project mentioned that they faced issues of stealing of sensors, and the sensors did not cost much, but they suspected that the sensors were being stolen and sold off in the scrapyard. In her words, she said that we installed one of our sensors near a slum to monitor water levels in a canal passing through the area. It is flood prone. But our sensors were stolen repeatedly. It was not very costly, but most probably it was being sold at a scrapyard. And it increased the overhead. Finally, we changed the sensor location. It is not scientifically optimal, but we have to make do with it. So when we are establishing an early warning system in a developing nation context, we have to understand the ecosystem within which the early warning system is going to operate. And these are the few aspects that emerged during our discussions with the different participants. These were the main challenges. So while discussing challenges, we also discussed how did they overcome those challenges. So the first thing that most of the participants mentioned was mainstreaming of the system. Now this is not a common term in this is not an uncommon term in DRR. We have often heard of mainstreaming of systems, but so when we say mainstreaming of early warning system, we mean that it should be integrated within the everyday operation of the agency to which it will finally be handed over. So for example, if it is the drainage and sewerage department who will be taking over the early warning system in the long run, then that this system needs to be integrated within their regular functioning. This system can help them monitor water levels in different canals and so on. So this is how when the system remains exclusive to be used only during flooding, only during the hazard months, it people lose touch with it. And when the flood comes, it often is in unoperational. But when we have an all season operation, people are more interested in the system, and also the system survives the phases when it is not being used. Secondly, budgeting. So the participants said that in most urban local bodies there is a fund crunch. So if this can be introduced as a budget head within the municipal council budgets, then there is a greater chance that even after the project team has finished their work, the system will be operational and there will be no this is another aspect which emerged during our discussions. The most important factor that the participants said was trust building. And there are different ways in which trust building can be done. And here are three examples in which participants with whom I discussed, they shared how they built trust in the process. First is recognizing a flag bearer of the project. Now early warning systems are multi-stakeholder projects. There are multiple stakeholders engaged in when an early warning system is developed. And identifying a champion from within the different stakeholders who will take forward this agenda of implement getting the early warning system implemented is very important. This flag bearer of the project is someone who does the ice breaking also. When the project team reaches out to a department asking them to implement the early warning system, it is the champion or the flag bearer who takes it forward. So I remember this one researcher whom I was interviewing, and she said that we faced many problems when initially we were trying to liaise with the departments, but then one of their engineers got very interested in the system and he pushed the system. He asked his other friends to make time and meet us, and that way we could complete the project within the time that was the time limit that was decided at the beginning of the project. So getting a flag bearer of the project or a champion of the project from within the stakeholders emerged as an important way to pass through the barriers which I discussed before. Second was association with an established body. An established body can be a governmental organization, a research organization which is recognized by the government or any other governmental institution. So when there is an association with an established body in a formal way, it helps the stakeholders in building trust on the project team, and the project team also gains credibility. So one of the researchers mentioned that initially the project the officials within with whom we were liaising were not very interested in our project, but once we liaised with informally with IMD, which is the Indian Meteorological Department, which is recognized by the government of India, it was much easy to uh, it was much easy to convince the different stakeholders with whom we were discussing, and they were also much more interested in the project that we were implementing. So that is one. And contextually informed is clear, I think, clear on its own, that the to build trust, the project team needs to understand what is the context within which the project is going to be implemented. And it again helps in building trust of the different stakeholders on the project team who and also on the project. And lastly, performance review. When an early warning system is being implemented, there can be multiple failures that the project team experiences. But these it is always important to the according to the participants, it was always important to be very clear with the nodal agencies or the stakeholders of the failures that they were facing. Otherwise there occurs an issue where the reliability of the project team reduces. So the continuous performance review and appraisal was helpful for the project teams. Coming to the conclusion, to sum up the study, it was the study aimed at understanding the challenges and barriers that researchers faced while that researchers, practitioners, and whoever was implementing an early warning system faced while developing and deploying an early warning system in an urban area of a developing nation. The main barriers emerged were governance issues, operational challenges, and sustainability concerns. The participants also identified that using context specific approaches and using a trust based approach, these barriers can be overcome, and there was this need for development of resources. And overall there was also this internalization of the fact that early warning systems are at the end socio-technical systems, which are developed to solve a problem, but they are not an end to the problem. So when the people comes first whenever we are implementing any early warning system. So these were the overall findings of the study. And the analysis of the analysis is still ongoing. There are a few more transcripts that need to be analyzed, and I hope that the findings of the study will help people, practitioners, young professionals, whoever is working towards the development of an early warning system in addressing few of the challenges that face. So thank you, and I'm really sorry for the interruption and going back and forth within the slides and the screens.
Thank you. Thank you, Manomita. There are questions to Manomita. I will start with a question anyway. So in the conclusion, you said that you are hoping that the study will have some practical impact. I was very much interested in your funding. And so what do you have in mind? Who should use your funding? I mean, city manager, country manager, the people
Yes.
in charge for the development of early warning systems. Can you say something
Yes.
about practical impact in your country or in your city? Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for the question. So, I think the findings of the study will be helpful for anyone, any practitioners or professional or any researcher who is working towards the development of an early warning system in a developing nation and in an urban context. Because when we started the project, we were not quite aware of these challenges, and a few of these things were not even have budgetary overheads, but these were not considered because we could not find any substantial document or substantial documentation which discussed these operational challenges. Mostly there were a lot of best case examples, a lot of best practices, but the issues of resource, the extreme resource constraints, so these were not documented to the extent that we expected they will be. So I feel that the practical implication for my study will be in helping researchers or practitioners or professionals, whoever is working towards the development of early warning systems. At the same time, it will also help city managers who are functioning as nodal organizations and liaising with or approaching or recruiting any other organization to develop a early warning system, so that there can be better collaboration between the two departments and also the different stakeholders who are involved in the process. So that is what I think may be the practical implication of my study.
There are two questions from Dr. Gupta. He is also from India. And you can read the questions. I will read for you. And Dr. Gupta is asking, when was field study done, and who funded the field study, the study?
Okay, so the interviews that I conducted were telephonic in nature. So there was no field study with the participants. But like I said before, that I had worked and lived in both these cities for some time, and that is where my personal experience comes in. And I did visit the Calcutta project where my colleagues have been working. That is. That is when the field study was done. The interviews with the participants was conducted in 2019 over a period of 6 months, right before December. So that would be from around April to October or so. The project was funded by whom? So this project was not the research project was not funded. I did it on my own interest because I felt that there was a gap that needs to be filled. So that would be the answer to the funding of the project.
I hope Mr. Gupta will be happy with the answer. There are any other question to Manomita? If not, we move to next speaker. Thank you, Manomita.
Thank you very much.
And next speaker, the last one, is Francesco Soldovieri. He is a researcher director at Institute for Electromagnetic Sensing of the Environment at CNR, that is the Italian research organization. And he has been a scientific coordinator for different FP7 project and the technical manager of the last H2020 project Heracles. Mr. Soldovieri, the floor is yours.
Good morning to everybody, and first of all, thank you, Dr. Bologna, for the presentation of my profile. And this is our first time of a presentation to this conference, so I think that we will attract some interest from you. Also because we are more focused on the technological aspects of the resilience improvement. In particular, this is the outline of my presentation. My presentation is concerned with the necessity and the perspective of the monitoring surveillance systems for in urban areas in a condition where there is a multi-risk scenario that can include several hazards. In particular, we start our presentation by presenting very briefly what are the challenges of the management of the urban areas in this in the present time affected by the COVID pandemic. After, we will show the necessity of a systematic approach for the improvement of the resilience in the urban areas. In this framework, it is very, very important the factor of the integration not only on the basis of the technological aspects, but also integration in terms of integration from technologies and social science and so on. Some examples of previous cases of monitoring the surveillance system and the sustainability of the integrated approach are presented after. And finally, we present a very brief survey of the advances in new application field enabled by the integration approach, and after the conclusions end the presentation. So, what are the challenges of in the present for the urban areas in the present time affected by the COVID? Of course, we are aware that the COVID pandemic has now changed dramatically our life and socioeconomic relationship at individual and public level. Urban areas and cities are trying to manage not only the immediate response to the COVID crisis, but at the same time, we are rethinking to the planning and managing resources for the crisis management, and not only also for the ordinary management of a city. The concept of inclusivity is crucial since the COVID pandemic has shown that the most vulnerable population is the one living in the poor areas of the city. And so in this frame, it is necessary to ensure the continuity and reliability of the essential services such as transport, energy, water supply, waste disposal. And this is a very, very challenging situation in urban areas, characterized by a strong interconnection and interdependence among the various services and networks. This such an interconnection can be exploited to improve the responses to the crisis events and the situation, but it is also a risk factor for the cascading effect that can may lead to the failure of the overall system of the networks. So it is not only it is necessary not only to protect vulnerable people from immediate threats, but also to improve the resilience for facing this multi-risk scenario. So there is the necessity of a systematic approach to the surveillance and monitoring of the urban areas in order to face different aims. The first one is to face the multi-risk scenario. It is necessary a systematic approach to the monitoring can be very, very important, relevant in order to support the planning of the maintenance intervention of the infrastructure and services. Of course, this system is relevant to mitigate and prevent the effects of the hazards through early warning capabilities, to support the management of the crisis event, and also to make a quick damage assessment after crisis event. So in this, by looking to this multifunctional aspect of the monitoring system, it is clear that the key factor in order to have a success of this kind of approach is the integration. In fact, the resilience must be addressed under a holistic frame where the system has to be able to couple the monitoring of the structure with the one of the embedding territory, because the territory is not only a source of opportunity for the structure, for the services, but is also a source for a risk for the infrastructure. For example, you can think to a landslide impacting on a transport infrastructure. So the monitoring system has to be improved by the development of a monitor of ICT and special data infrastructure in order to integrate the different kind of information, not only from the sensing and diagnostic technologies. After the system has to ensure the capability to assimilate all the sensing and monitoring data in civil engineering or mobility models in order, for example, to assess the loss of the performance of the structure or of the transportation system. This is a concept that was pointed out by Dr. Bologna in the introductory speech of this session. This is important in order to identify and plan action and strategies for an effective and economically sustainable management of the infrastructure. The system has to be able to couple, to follow the structure not only during the overall lifetime, but also to give a support in all the phases of the risk risk management the system has to be enable not only early warning but also ordinary monitoring and quick damage assessment. And as also pointed out in the introductory speech, the use of intelligence, artificial and big data can be very, very important. But I think that at this stage we are still very, very early in the research, and there are also it is still important to make an effort in order to allow the transfer knowledge from the community of the risk emergency management to the community of the persons that deal with artificial intelligence or big data technology. So, just to exemplify what I want to try to say, I show here a first experiment made 10 years ago in the framework of a European project, TIEMS project that was a framework 7 program, program 7 project that was devoted to assess the use of a technology based on electromagnetic sensing for non-invasive monitoring of a transport infrastructure. This the slide that I show now regards to an experiment and demonstration activities made at the Musumeci Bridge, or better Basento Viaduct. where that is a critical infrastructure in order because links the city of Potenza in southern Italy with the Basentana, that is the main regional highway in Basilicata. And this is not only a critical infrastructure, but this is also a sort of architectonic masterpiece because it was designed and built by Sergio Musumeci between 1916 and 1917. So this bridge was investigated and monitored by different technology. So essentially, we can divide the technology that were deployed at the Musumeci Bridge in 4 classes, and just this classification is a sort of foundation for the integration. We used some technologies, such as synthetic aperture radar and airborne surveys in order to have information not only on the structure on the bridge but also on the bending territory. So the technology depicted in red are relative to a global vision of the bridge. Of course, this global vision is integrated with the analysis of the vibrational movement of the bridge. That is a sort of indicator status, indicator of the healthiness of the bridge. So we are speaking about accelerometers, seismic microtremor, optical displays monitoring, and so on. After we have used on a single part, on a part of the bridge, some in situ technology that are able to give information not only on the surface of the bridge by means of a camera, but also about the inner of the inside of the bridge, and also about the underground on which the bridge is built. And here we have no time, no much time, so I will present the richness of the results on this, achieved at this bridge. The SAR, synthetic aperture radar, give information about the local deformation of the bridge. The blue points accounts for the deformation, while the green dots points are relative to no deformation, no movement of the soil or of the bridge. Of course, we have used different technologies, so we have also made a comparison between a radar for measurement of the vibration of the bridge with the accelerometer. We made also measurements with infrared thermography in order to assess the thermal behavior of the bridge, and also we use the GPR in order to have a sort of a radiography of the inner of the bridge. All this data were also used and exploited in order to improve the numerical model of the bridge, and we can see in this figure what is the movement of the bridge under a thermal seasonal behavior, and also what is the fundamental mode shape of vibration of the bridge. So it was important this kind of activity, because we have made a first trial of simulating the sensing results in the civil engineering models. This was the past. Now the problem, the question, the issues that was raised to us for many years was, but what is the sustainability of this integrated approach? Because you are speaking of a bridge, but when you consider that in Italy we have 60 thousand bridge. This kind of approach cannot be used because it is not economically sustainable. And we have a first response to response to this question. The problem is that we have to use all the technological tools for the sensing that are necessary for the situation. So it is important to define some operational chains, some observational chains, where the choice of the technologies, of the in situ technology, or the more sophisticated technologies, has to be made on the basis of the criticalities detected by more cheaper or technologies that are able to ensure the global vision of the bridge. In order to simplify this concept, I will show very briefly what is an example of an operative protocol for a bridge monitoring. For example, we can start when we are going to make the monitoring or the diagnostic of a bridge with a level 0. At level 0, the information that you can gain are about the deformation status of the structure and of the territory, as I have just shown you with by means of synthetic aperture radar. This information can be combined with the frequency of structural vibration by means of an accelerometer. And after, you can also make a sort of you can gain information about the status of the damage, deterioration of the surface, maybe through infrared thermography or the optical sensor by drones. So this kind of a level is a level that does not require interruption of the traffic on the bridge, does not require the presence of the operator, and so it is characterized by a very simplified logistics associated to the measurements. After that, the level 1 has identified some criticalities, we can turn to a level 1, where the level 1 in the level 1, what is important is the use of an array of accelerometers that are able to give information on the modal behavior of the bridge, coupled with sensor on mobile platform, such as, for example, ground penetrating radar on a mobile platform, able to give you information on the deck of the bridge. In this way, we have a more complicated logistics, but we are still with a simplified logistics and with the technologies that are still can be managed in a smart way. The final level is a level where when criticalities be identified at the level 1, at the level 1, after it is necessary to use in situ technologies, to use in situ specialized technologies. So this is the most sophisticated and most costous level of observation. But this is the final level that has to be faced when the other two levels have given indication for facing this level. What are the new frontiers in the monitoring besides the aspects of the integration? Essentially, the development of monitoring surveillance system is very favored by the presence of by the improvement of the technology such as Earth observation, positioning and navigation, telecommunication, and ICT in order to build the architecture to manage the data from the sensing. We have in the last years we have a huge development of a new observational platform, not only satellite airborne but also mini and micro satellite as a constellation, and also drones. And very recently there is the concept of the digital twins that is at a very early stage, but it is very important in order to provide new generation tools for resilience improvement. And just to show some example, we have made some projects very recently. This is the present, and so we have turned from the scale of the infrastructure monitoring to the scale of the city. And this is a national Italian project where we have integrated different technologies, from the remote sensing to the in situ technology, to low-cost sensors such as MEMS sensors and ICT tools, in order to have a monitoring of the city. We are speaking of the city of Matera, that is a very UNESCO site that is well known, where we made we used essentially Matera as a laboratory, and we made different surveys and measurements. Here you can see a sort of integration between the GPR and the electrical resistivity tomography in order to have information inside in the underground of Matera. So we were able to identify and characterize, identify and have information about some anthropic structures inside the underground. Here you can, in this slide, always in the Clara project, we made an analysis on the urban areas of the by using a multi-scale geophysical methods for mapping the resonance effects between the soil and the buildings. This is very important in mitigating the seismic risk, because when we have that the frequency of resonance of a structure is equal to the one of the soil, this is a problem in the presence of a seismic event. And all this information with other information from the public administration were included in a sort of geospatial data infrastructure platform, where different data from the sensing and from the public administration were integrated and were made available to the public administration. What is one now, by turning very briefly to progressive in sensing, I think that one of the field of the research fields in which it is possible to make an advances is the miniaturization of the sensor. This is important because in this way you are able to have a pervasive sensing of the city, and this is a concept also important, for example, for the inclusivity of the population, because when people see that, for example, when a person has a sensor inside his house, maybe that this is a sort of sign of inclusivity. So there is a miniaturization of the sensor in order to have information on water quality, for example, on the air quality, and also on the monitoring, and also about building stability or some of similar. So this is one of the progress that is ongoing, and it is very important for the system. It is what is important is it is also important to assess the new technologies, but not only the new technologies, but also the integration strategy in a laboratory before to use this in real situation. And in this frame, it is important to have one scale laboratory such as the one in Gustav Eiffel University, where we have a climate change chamber covering an area of 400 square meters, over which a mini city has been built, and this kind of laboratory in scale 1:1 is used in order to assess the performance of sensors, especially miniaturized sensors for monitoring. This is an example. For example, in Sense City was a new sensor for water monitoring was assessed before the use on site deployment in India. And of course, there is the necessity of new advances also in data processing associated to the sensing. In this slide, I show as example an activity at Gustav Eiffel University where there is the necessity to improve the models, the infrared thermography, by mitigating the source errors for long-term in situ thermal monitoring. That is very, very important, for example, when you want to monitor an infrastructure. And finally, this kind of approach can be used, and there are it is very, very important that the data processing and the modeling in the case of, for example, of the fast reconstruction of pollutions flux in urban areas, such as the one presented in this.
Sorry, Francesco.
I have closed. Okay, this is this is just the last one. So the conclusion was that among the lessons learned by the COVID, a strong interconnection among the various services and networks can be a risk factor and or a useful tool to improve the response to crisis events. The resilience has to be managed as a whole, addressing not only the single infrastructure, but all the urban areas, all the systems of the system, the system of the systems. The key role of the monitoring in situational awareness separation has been underlined. And what is important, it is important that transfer knowledge between different community of research. For example, in order to assimilate the results of the sensing structural models, it is very, very important to have a good transfer knowledge with the civil engineering community. Thank you for the attention, and sorry if I was a little bit more longer than I was expected.
Thank you, Francesco. Thank you for your presentation. Any question direct to Francesco? I will start. The first question. You know, you have been presenting a lot of new technologies that can be used. The point is how to deal with the old infrastructures, how to deal with the old cities. Because we are reading every now and then that in the Arabic country, they are designing new towns from the very beginning, using all the technology you are mentioning in your presentation. But have you any idea on how to use this technology in old cities and old infrastructure? That is the first question. The second question is more related to civil engineers. Why the new bridge made by concrete are so fragile compared to the old bridge, Roman bridge made by bricks? Thank you.
Okay. Okay, it is more or less the same question. Okay, in the meaning that the problem is about the first question. What I have tried to underline the presentation is that we have now a very, very huge amount of technologies of the ICT or intelligence, artificial intelligence, and so on. But it is necessary to use this kind of technology in a sustainable way. Okay. What I mean, it is important to have the technologies, but it is also important to design some protocols, some operative chains in order to say, okay, for this structure, we have to use these technologies, but we have not to use all the technologies at the same time, but to organize the sensing technology, for example, in a way that we can activate the more complicated technologies when the technologies, when the cheaper technologies are detecting some criticalities. So it is very clear to me that the main issues of it is not the technologies, but it is how to ensure the sustainability of the technologies in order to have a real exploitation of all this technological framework in a real condition. This is my point of view, because the question is this, because the problem is that in many cases there is not a transfer knowledge. It is not a clear transfer knowledge between different research communities. For example, now I was involved in a sort of in a research proposal. We are writing a research proposal where there are all the community of the artificial intelligence, big data, that have very, very good solutions in general. But how this solution can be included in the framework of the infrastructure monitoring is very, very is very, very complicated, because we are speaking two complete different languages. About the second question, yes, I think that in this kind I am an electronic engineer, and I had a sort of ingenious, a technological point of view in the first years of this my activity, and in my first part of my experience with this kind of thematics, I had the same point of view. Okay, many technologies, more technologies, it is better for the monitor. It is not so. So we have to go to identify simple solution, but simple but robust solution, where the technologies are at the service of the aims of the stakeholders. It is not. We have not complicated the technologies with some technologies that are not useful for our problem. This is my point of view. So, of course, in order to if you have to manage the concrete bridge, maybe that you have a completely different sensor from the old bridge. But this information has to be provided by the civil engineers, and after that the civil engineers has clarified the requirements. After you can think to build observational chains with the sensors.
Thank you, Francesco. We still have a few minutes to the end of the session, and there are questions to any of the speakers, or to Francesco, the last one. Maybe Roman?
Sandro?
Yeah.
Yes, sorry,
Roman.
there was a question. Yes, thank you very much. It was a very nice. Sorry,
Roman, just one because there is my son that I have to wet my son.
Okay.
There was
Yes. In the Q&A box, Snežana Knjezic is asking, are there any attempts to connect sensors system with early warning system or risk assessment?
Yes, I understand the question of Snežana, and we have made an attempt to connect the sensor system with the early warning system and risk assessment in a recent Age 2020 project. That was this Heracles, where we have tried to link the sensing outcome to the as input to modeling of the risk assessment. We made some efforts in this direction, and some we have defined some workflow for the operators where we have used a sort of flow where the sensing data were used in order to feed for example, the risk assessment models, and after that the risk assessment models and related actions have been done. We have after made a diagnostics of the structure such as can be a cultural heritage manufacturing, in order to see the effect of the early warning system or of the risk assessment tool. So there are some, but this is another field that is completely at the early stage, because there is a difficulty in order to ensure a good discussion between the technologists and the community of the management of the emergency or risk management.
Thank you. Sandro, can I ask a follow-up question?
Very short question, because I have to leave the floor to the organizer that they have to ask something. Very short.
That's fine. It can wait. Please. No, it's fine. It can wait. I'll do it via email. Thank you.
Okay. So I think I read a message that I should leave the floor to the organizer, maybe to Jean-Paul.
Yes, maybe the floor is very simply to announce that we will send everybody a poll to estimate the quality and the feeling of to have the feedback of the person attending. Speakers are not allowed to complete this poll, but please feel free to write your feeling, your feedback on the session. And afterwards, we will share the results with the speakers. So,
Jean-Paul, one question. We start 1 o'clock again with the next session?
Yes, next session, 1 o'clock, to better respond to time zones, America.
Okay.
And also to the schedule of the professors in university. So thank you, everybody, attending this session. Sandro, last word for you to close. You're mute. Unmute your...
Thank you. Well, we should try to organize a more focused session about smart city resilience. You know, the topic of a smart city is a very very common topic, and it needs to be addressed at the level of a system of systems, and maybe for the next year we should work to have a more focused session, or more than just one session. Thank you. The session is closed. See you in 1 hour. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Bye.
Simo. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.